Hello, basketball people, we have news. Let's go to more news about the Golden State Warriors. I ask you to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, as I am a Warriors fan. The Warriors need a big player with a strong presence in the paint, and Nick Claxton fills that role. Nick Claxton trade could be a game-changer for the Warriors. According to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, Claxton remains toward the top of potential center trade targets for Mike Dunleavy Jr. and the Warrior front office. Nick Claxton is obviously the type of center the Warriors need since he can provide immediate production defensively and in terms of rebounding. Golden State has a genuine interest in Claxton, and there have been conversations between the two teams since the start of the season, Siegel said. On one hand, Jackson Davis' return to the rotation and solid production could lessen the need for another center on the roster. However, on the other hand, it also proves that acquiring a player like Claxton could be a real game-changer for Golden State. The Warriors got a first-hand look at a pair of potential trade targets in Brooklyn on Monday, with both Claxton and Michael Porter Jr. impressing despite the fact the visitors emerged victorious in a 120-107 win. Claxton did a bit of everything in his nearly 36 minutes, flying around the floor for numerous dunks and blocks. He finished with 15 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals and 3 blocks on 7 of 9 shooting from the floor, finishing as a +1 despite his team's 13-point loss. Claxton twice flew out to block 3-point jump shots, showcasing the athleticism and 7 feet 3 inches wingspan that seemingly has Golden State intrigued ahead of the trade deadline. His $25.4 million salary is around the right range for a Jonathan Kuminga trade, albeit it may require a third team given the Nets seemingly don't have much interest in the young Warrior forward. Perhaps the Warriors need to target offensive-minded players first and foremost, particularly when the lack of spacing in a front court of Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green and Claxton could be problematic. Having an interior force like Claxton on both ends of the floor could still be a real difference-maker though, especially after what Jackson Davis has been able to do over the past 10 games. The return of Tracy Jackson Davis to Steve Kerr's rotation has proven just how much the Golden State Warriors need more presence in the paint, both offensively and defensively. The third-year center has been a key piece for the Warriors in recent weeks, but what if they had an even bigger and better version? Golden State could get just that with a trade for Brooklyn Nets center Nick Claxton, who was once again linked to the 26-year-old on Tuesday. Warriors regret in signing Seth Curry grows after latest injury. It went from bad to worse. Fans hoped that the Golden State Warriors' signing of Seth Curry would be more than a heartwarming story of him playing alongside his brother, Steph. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. He's played only 2 games, and on Sunday, the team announced he is dealing with a sciatic nerve issue. In Seth's regular season debut for the Warriors, he scored 14 points in 18 minutes on 6 of 7 shooting from the field. It was encouraging. 2 nights later, he played 14 minutes against the Sixers, but shot 0 of 2 from the field. That was 26 days ago, and Seth hasn't played since. He missed the past few games due to the injury, and he'll be out for at least 2 more weeks, which is when Golden State said he'd be reevaluated. It's not that the Warriors anticipated he would play a significant role or anything like that. If he were, that would be a sign of an even larger issue. But the signing has already shaped up to be yet another offseason move the front office should regret. Seth Curry is the latest Warrior dealing with a sciatic nerve issue. Golden State has a very slim margin for error in its push to win another title with Steph, so while it's still only December, the Warriors sitting 8th in the West isn't exactly ideal. If the season ended today, they'd have to fight their way to the first round via the play-in tournament. Their reward, depending on whether they secured the 7th or 8th seed, would be the Thunder or Spurs. Talk about reassuring. All of that is to say that even though Seth is just on a minimum deal, the Warriors could use more of a contribution from him than what he's given. All that his first game with the team did was raise fans' hopes. It says a lot that before getting hurt, Seth was already out of the rotation, even on a team whose offense sits in the bottom half of the league, number 20. Golden State leads the league in 3-point attempts per game, 43.7, and makes 15.7, but its 3-point percentage ranks 14th, 35.9%. You'd think Seth would be able to help with that, but he spent most of his time on the end of the bench. Hopefully, for Seth's sake, his sciatic nerve issue doesn't bother him too much, and he is cleared to return soon. LeBron, who dealt with the same thing at the beginning of the season, spoke about how painful it is. Al Horford understands, but at least he's back now. Fingers crossed that Seth will be in the clear soon. Anthony Davis will not play for the Warriors. Golden State Warriors have been mediocre so far on the 2025-26 NBA season, currently sitting at 17-16 following a recent road win over the Brooklyn Nets. While the Warriors still have Stephen Curry playing at an All-NBA level, the team's lack of depth and competent frontcourt players have been a glaring issue this year. With this being the case, it should come as no surprise that one trade candidate that has come up repeatedly is Dallas Mavericks big man Anthony Davis, who has been in and out of the lineup this year due to injury. However, recently, NBA insider Mark Stein took to his Substack to inform fans why they shouldn't hold their breath on that front. Golden State, for starters, has no realistic pathway to acquire Davis unless it is also willing to part with Jimmy Butler or franchise fixture Draymond Green, reported Stein. I'm likewise told that Davis's contract, with potentially 2 years still left on it if the 32-year-old exercises his $62.7 million player option in 2027-28, and the injury woes he has endured since becoming a Maverick have thrust a measure of pause into Golden State's deliberations. Indeed, injuries have been a major problem for Davis throughout his career, and in particular since he joined the Mavericks as part of the shocking Luka Doncic trade last year. Meanwhile, Golden State's fierce loyalty to franchise stalwarts like Draymond Green, as Stein mentioned, also might make them hesitant to make an all-in trade for a player like Davis, even if it might help them out in the short term. Overall, it seems more likely that the Warriors pursue smaller names on the frontcourt trade market, as opposed to pushing their chips to the center of the table for Davis. In any case, the Warriors will next take the floor on New Year's Eve for a game against the Charlotte Hornets. An NBA expert stated that Jonathan Kuminga could remain with the Warriors. 2025. Having been out of Steve Kerr's rotation in 8 of the past 9 games, it seems a fait accompli that the Golden State Warriors will trade Jonathan Kuminga once the young forward is eligible to be moved again on January 15. However, ESPN's Tim Bontemps has painted the picture of a potential nightmare scenario where Kuminga actually remains with the Warriors through the deadline and for the rest of this season. Warriors could keep Jonathan Kuminga according to Tim Bontemps. Speaking during an episode of the Warriors Stock Report on Tuesday, Bontemps outlined a situation where the franchise could keep Kuminga until the offseason despite his complete lack of role on the team right now. It still would not surprise me if we're sitting here doing a show on February 5th or 6th and Jonathan Kuminga is still on the Warriors, and we're stuck in this endless loop for another 4, 5, 6 months until the summertime, Bontemps said. Bontemps' reasoning is that Golden State might be able to pull off a bigger, more impactful trade in the summer, rather than rushing into a deal before the February 5th deadline that might not necessarily lift them into contention. Still, the prospect of Kuminga remaining with the Warriors beyond the deadline is one most fans simply won't believe possible. In fact, many would regard it more likely that the 23-year-old has played his last game with the franchise, particularly after Kuminga was the only available player not utilized by Kerr during Monday's 120-107 victory over the Brooklyn Nets. Bontemps colleague Anthony Slater did push back on the notion that Kuminga could stay beyond the deadline, predicting that Mike Dunleavy Jr. and the front office will indeed move the former 7th overall pick before February 5. If Bontemps' scenario did play out, that would be a nightmare given Golden State are currently getting 0 out of a player making $22.5 million this season. Even if there's no deal that brings back the kind of star player the Warriors probably need to be a major threat in the Western Conference, surely they can at least flip Kuminga for another piece that will play meaningful minutes in the rotation? Between Kuminga and veteran sharpshooter Buddy Hield, the Warriors have over $30 million in salary to use, along with essentially all their future draft capital. With that kind of flexibility, it's still incredibly difficult to see Kuminga remaining with the franchise for the second half of the season. Pacific Division is right there for the Warriors to take. Lakers are collapsing, Suns are grinding ugly, and the Warriors are perfectly positioned to steal the Pacific Division. The Pacific Division doesn't have a juggernaut right now. It has a collection of wounded animals limping toward the finish line, and the Golden State Warriors are positioned to capitalize on every stumble, every organizational meltdown, every structural crack that's starting to show across the West Coast. The Los Angeles Lakers are leading the division at 20-11, but that record feels more like smoke and mirrors than actual dominance. They just got demolished 128-106 by the Detroit Pistons, allowing Cade Cunningham to carve up their defense for 27 points and 11 assists while the Pistons shot 63% from the field. J.J. Redick stood in front of reporters afterward sounding like a man watching his roster fall apart in real time. Austin Reeves, their breakout guard, is sidelined for at least a month. LeBron just turned 41 and is still being asked to carry offensive possessions alongside Luka Doncic in a pairing that hasn't found its rhythm. The Lakers are only 4 games ahead of Golden State, and they're showing cracks that feel structural rather than fixable. The Phoenix Suns sit at 19-13, winners of 4 straight, but those victories have come with all the aesthetic appeal of a dental procedure. They beat Washington 115-101, and finished with a 26-10 advantage in second chance points because they crashed the offensive glass like their season depended on it. Colin Gillespie has scored 15-plus points in 6 straight games, Royce O'Neal is hitting 5 threes per night, and suddenly the Suns have discovered a supporting cast that can actually contribute. But are these performances more like lightning in a bottle than sustainable basketball? The Suns are only 1.5 games behind the Lakers and just 2.5 games ahead of the Warriors, and they're doing it by outworking their opponents. Of course, the Warriors have won 2 out of the 3 contests the teams have shared so far. Meanwhile, the LA Clippers are buried at 11-21, riding a 5-game winning streak that feels less like a playoff push and more like a team finally remembering basketball exists. Kawhi Leonard recently dropped a career-high 55 points against Detroit, looking like the two-way force that won championships in Toronto, but nobody knows if this version of Kawhi shows up consistently or disappears for another month. The Clippers are 5.5 games behind Golden State, playing must-win games in December just to stay relevant in the play-in conversation. And then there's Sacramento, sitting at 8-25 and dead last in the conference, a franchise so dysfunctionally constructed that fans are screaming at Zach LaVine to play defense. Check out this quote from King's blog A Royal Pain. Co-owner Vivek Ranadive is at the core of this. He's the one who has mismanaged the team for well over a decade, consistently putting people with no understanding of basketball in positions of power. To make matters worse, he played a big part in the decisions that created this imbalanced roster. More recently, Doug Christie and his coaching staff have created new problems. His myopic focus on creating a defensive powerhouse with a roster stocked with shoot-first guards is baffling. Instead of using players to their strengths, he's trying to force square pegs into round holes. The Kings are 9 games behind the Warriors and showing zero signs of figuring anything out. Damn. That sounds intense. The Clippers just destroyed them 131-90 BTW. The Warriors have 48 games left to capitalize on this chaos. The division doesn't have a team playing sustainable, championship-caliber basketball. The Lakers are imploding. The Suns are grinding out ugly wins against bad teams. The Clippers are praying Kawhi's knees hold together. The Kings are organizational rubble. Golden State is right there, 17-16 and within striking distance of every flawed team ahead of them. The window is open. Time to walk through it. The Warriors must consolidate their rotation at some point this season. This past offseason, Golden State's focus, apart from adding veteran center Al Horford, was largely on shoring up their backcourt. They ultimately added both DeAnthony Melton and Seth Curry through free agency while bringing back Gary Payton II and adding Will Richard through the draft. Throwing Brandon Podziemski, Buddy Hield, Moses Moody, and Pat Spencer into the mix, this has left them with a grand total of 8 players who are capable of slotting into the backcourt alongside Stephen Curry. In their matchup against the Dallas Mavericks alone, 5 of these players got at least 10 minutes on the court while Hield and Spencer received DNPs. While Kerr chose the right combination in this setting, giving both Payton and Melton run to end the game, none of these players have the impact necessary to be the player that the team needs alongside Stephen Curry. Therefore, the Warriors' success to this point in the season has been entirely dependent on Kerr pushing the right buttons, a gamble that has failed almost as often as it has paid off. While it is true that a deep roster is needed for regular season success, the team will need a player they can fully rely on when the postseason comes. As it stands, none of these guards have been reliable enough to be that guy. Golden State has achieved its goal of rotational versatility and depth. When it really comes down to it, however, they will need to consolidate their rotation, either through a trade or through tough playing time decisions, in order to gain consistency and reliability in their starting and closing lineups.